haven't been introduced because you now know that I am total chaos, which is how it works. One of the things I'd like to ask you, if it's possible that we can gather closer to the front so that we can actually have some reasonable level of communication. And what I'd like to do, Peter, can I ask you a favor?
Yes.
If you take one or two of those to play with, and then pass them along, and then let everybody play with all of them and feel what... You can make a noise with them if you can grab it. Okay. Right. Mozambique. Mozambique recently was listed as the third most miserable place in the world. Since independence 43 years ago, it has never got better than a 40% chronic child malnutrition. Its deforestation rate officially is 0.3%, but if you actually just measure the whales arriving in both Vietnamese and Chinese ports, it is not possible for that to be true unless the deforestation rate is somewhere around 5%. Mozambique, in 1963, in a study by Wild and Barbosa, had 75% forest cover in a system known as Miombo, which is a brachystygia-dominated mosaic of species. And at the moment, if you look at current satellite imagery, it's about 12% rather than 75%. There are a number of problems causing that. Just to give you an idea of what we do at Mezimbite. Mezimbite is a forest conservation organization in central Mozambique. Some of you who've listened to me before will know that we are the largest planter of indigenous species trees in the Miombo woodland and in the biome, which covers 10 countries. The way in which we work, if you saw the previous photographs, those are across the road from Mezimbite Forest Center. So all of that death and destruction stuff is one side of the road, this is the other side of the road. 23 years ago when it started, what you see here as nice thick trees looked exactly the same as the other side of the road. So that is 23 years of work. The way in which the forest conservation works is quite different to other organizations in that what we do is we provide the incentive to look after forests by using forest products intelligently, by using it with the people who live in the forest and making sure that they get the real benefits of their own work, and we make sure that those benefits are maximized by trying to dominate the supply chain. Those of you who know a little bit about the most basic of supply economics, the guys at the bottom of the supply chain earn the least, the guys at the top of the supply chain earn the most. So the higher you get up the supply chain, the more money you get. The more money you get, the bigger the incentive to look after your forest. In doing that, we have one problem. There is no skilled labor pool. In 1975, a year after independence, Mozambique cancelled its laws, which were colonial laws related to the training of artisans and trades. They have never bothered to bring in a new law, so for 43 years there has been no law governing the training of artisans, and therefore no expenditure on it. If you look at that number, and you look at the normal natural life of an artisan, all artisans who were trained in the time when that formal training existed have now retired. Or died. Basically, we're a vertically integrated forest business, so you saw there's a little sawmill, here's some logs, cut up. This is some of the product which is turned... This is Environmental Education Center in Gorongosa. Kind of changes the light a bit there. And we do everything you can imagine from timber. So we start with big things like building buildings, making fancy doors and components, smart furniture, the coconuts, which you know is a related project next door to it, re-establishment of old crafts. In this particular case, this is just a sideline, we'll talk about the line later on. but utilization of timber to the maximum. We also use a large number of non-timber forest products. One of the most important one is beekeeping, because as you generate new trees, you need pollinators. In addition to that, we need natural finishes for our products. All of the stuff we do, we make ourselves. Now, in the process of that, we also have found that people are malnourished. Can't teach anybody and train anybody if they don't eat. And you certainly can't train children if they didn't eat in their formative years. So we have a massive program of agroforestry, which both happens to be a very, very good carbon sequester, as well as reskill people and make sure that people are receiving appropriate nutrition. There's a program not only of feeding our own people, but also we run a farmer's market, and we have reintroduced fresh organic food into the Mozambican market. And these are some of the examples as we go of the nature of the product which is made, exhibited in fancy spots. And recently I gave a lecture about soup and how that is one of the most important design elements that you can have, because soup is a mixture. It's everything. You throw everything in the soup. Linked to that, the bowl that you see illustrated there is a wooden bowl specially designed for a soup kitchen, which is mobile, and it is used to feed marginalized kids in the street. There are 1,000 bowls, and we serve 1,000 bowls of soup twice a day. Yeah, everything in that picture is generated by ourselves, whether it is the salad oil, the vinegar, the kale, the whatever. Now, in the training of artisans, one of the things that happens is we become tremendously wasteful. You have to teach people to cross-cut. You have to teach people to rip. This is last year. This is one of my first women apprentices. You don't want to know the fight in a highly sexist society to get women apprentices. Yeah. Took 23 years to find that acceptable in society that we can have women. It's extremely important that people learn to do things in a manner which is accurate and which is precise. There are also issues of design which are tremendously important when we are looking at the way in which we design things. We spoke yesterday and the day before about issues of the object, and it's a principle of Zen design. The object contains the spirit of all of those things that went before it. So it's very, very important as you learn to do something, and it's much more evident with wood because wood is a live substance, that it contains everything that goes before it. So if you think of that, and we look at the system that we have, we're looking at adult education of teaching people woodworking skills. There's an enormous heap of waste in woodwork. And in teaching, the heap of waste is even bigger. Now, one of the things that occurred, and this is just a little example of somebody else doing some of the stuff, but one of the things that occurred is one of the part-time people who came to look for a job at Mezimbite, shortly after he arrived, he died and abandoned his son. His son was 12 years old, that's in there. He could neither read or write, he had never been to school. In order to rectify some of that and start teaching some of the basic things, we made a set of blocks based on Stern's blocks, which were designed in Poland in the late 19th century by a guy called Stern in order to teach people to count. Those are some of the numbers, and there's a whole system of how you deal with numbers, a whole system of how we deal with letters. Just incidentally, the box of blocks that you saw there, those were Puyi's blocks in the Forbidden City. These are the beginnings of the blocks which we made in order to try and teach this kid the basics. And we started to design a system which was appropriate for the culture in which we live. In other words, these are not Stern's blocks which are designed for an intellectual culture of Germany, Poland, the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is what those were done. These blocks are designed for use in Africa. What we also discovered is that in terms of early childhood development, it is absolutely essential, if children are going to follow a technical career of any sort, that they play with blocks between the ages of 3 and 6. Some of the theory says between 2 and 5. I'm not prepared to have an argument about it. It works. There is no question that you do not get proper development if you do not have the spatial perception developed in this. So we developed a system which is based on the very old-fashioned 3 R's. Reading, writing, and reckoning. And thinking, we added 1. So it's R, 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 and T. Okay. So those are very, very important. And we developed blocks which were suitable. So we pinched the idea of Scrabble tiles. And there's movement in the letter of how you do it, and those are engraved into it. Those are boxes that they've done. And we decided to use the leftovers of precious hardwoods. And the reason for that is very important. Your vocabulary that you learn, the development of your mind that occurs when you are in those formative years, up to the age of 6, gives you the vocabulary and the method of learning and all of those things that are of value to you later on. So if you learn to play with blocks and you use Lego, then your mind adapts to injection molded plastic, and that is the value that you get. If, however, you work with a wooden block, that spirit of the tree that we spoke about in design is carried through in those blocks and to those children. So there you see some of the construction blocks, which are the basic ones. So your foundations of design, your foundations of woodwork are actually being laid with your kids when they are 3. This is at a local orphanage. We've got lots of playing with these things. Now the number blocks have a fancy box that they put in. They're arranged in order of the rainbow because that's a really easy thing for you to notice, and it's a natural order, and the numbers are attached with those, and each colored block has a little piece that you can plug into there so you can get the numbers, and then you can start playing with the blocks and getting how they all fit together. And these are all handmade by apprentices. So one of the things which is remarkable that we found, in doing all of this work, I sent a set of blocks to the United States, and they went to a school for gifted children. These kids all have an IQ of about 140. What was remarkable when they played is they actually produced the same structures. Yeah, as kids who never learned to read and write. Excuse me. Yeah. Some of the other research that we found in these is that the mothers in the United States of the 100 top people in high tech were interviewed, and the favorite toy, without exception, for all of those people when they were kids were blocks. So there's definitely a link between human development and personal human development with what happens in early childhood and how you make these things. In terms of block factories, other than what we are doing, there's one in South Africa. For the rest of the continent, there are none. That's just another fun little toy. It's a birthday cake, which happens to also be a jewelry box made of wood. Okay, the final piece of it, in terms of education and related to these things, is what you do about putting back. So part of putting back is making sure that your nature is restructured and looked after. So every piece of work that is done and every tree that is cut is replaced and new ones grown, as well as a massive program in order to actually make sure that historical damage is corrected. So you can see, from this program, 4 years later, you're getting that. From the normal programs, that is what you're getting. Now, also another piece of experience which is actually quite remarkable and which we're starting to see. We've been training artisans now for more than 20 years. Our initial artisans, a number of them are journeymen, and a number of them have children. We are now starting to train, as artisans, the first kids who played with blocks. Yeah. And the difference in pace of learning is unbelievable. Yeah. The difference in having had the privilege of having a few toys, and basically that's all the blocks are, is that you have actually changed the lives of those kids. Now, the application of this in terms of what we are doing as the Wood Appreciation Society is that what we've done is we've said, okay, it is critical, A, that people get a good technical education. The foundations of that come with the toys that they play with. You can link the production of those to putting back into the environment, and most important of all, you actually learn to appreciate what wood is, and therefore you will use it later. Thank you.